Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is my review of the Crimson Trace CTS 1100 optic. Crimson Trace is already a well-established company, known mostly for their lasers, handgun lasers, integrated lasers, and later IR lasers. They've recently started manufacturing a wide degree of optics, and the first one I was able to get my hands on, Crimson Trace sent me the CTS 1100, which is a 3.5 by 30 magnification optic. If you look at it, you'll notice it shares some similarities with another optic that's out there. It's not like a copy or anything, but it's definitely in the same category as Trigicon's venerable ACOG. Having a long history of using the ACOG, I wanted to see if, not necessarily as a comparison, but knowing the performance of that fixed magnification optic, was the CTS 1100 on its own going to be a very durable fixed magnification optic for intermediate range purposes. Now, getting right into the features of the CTS 1100, it's 3.5 magnification, 30mm field of view. It is a battery-powered illuminated reticle, which has smart sense technology, so it turns itself off after 90 minutes of inactivity to save your battery. It's powered by your traditional CR2032 battery that powers so many different optics out there. The reticle is BDC. It didn't specify which round it was for, but it gives you 15 MOA of bullet drop compensation with intersecting points that you can use obviously for a crosshair if you're compensating for bullet drop over distance, with a recommended zero of 100 yards. Adjustments are 0.5 MOA. For a 100-yard zero, I'd kind of like to see quarter MOA adjustments, but that's the feature that they put in there. Another cool feature is the fact that the reticle focus is adjustable. Some of the older fixed power magnification optics you had, that wasn't an option. So I like the ability to fine tune it, especially for people who wear corrective lenses. That's a cool feature to have. The CTS 1100 has a one-piece mount, recessed objective window, slightly recessed ocular lens, and your hard points, I should say, your adjustments are protected. They have built-in shrouds to help shield your adjustment knobs in the event that the optic takes a spill or gets dropped from a shoulder height, which is coming. As soon as I got the optic, I went ahead and put a good zero on it. I zeroed it, recommended 100 meters, and then I did, 100 yards. And then I did the burn down. Burn down is 500 rounds as fast as possible to see if the accelerated fire of 500 rounds creates any problems with the object that is being reviewed, the item, the accessory, the muzzle device, the suppressor, in this case, the optic. Because it's a one-piece design, it's a one-piece body, I wanted to see if any of that heat transfer was going to cause any issues such as flickering with the illuminated reticle, or any other issues, mirage or things of that nature that would occur during that 500 round process. So here's your burn down. 500 rounds fired, no problems, no flickering of the reticle. One thing I did notice, I'm filming primarily during the day. The CTS 1100 reticle is somewhat dim in daylight, in bright daylight. In twilight and under low light situations, it's great. But in daylight, I'm not really getting a lot out of that illumination. I wish it had 3 or 4 additional brightness settings. Another thing I identified is quickly within that 500 plus the zero rounds that I fired is the eye relief is very unforgiving. You pretty much have 1 inch worth of play, if that, to get a proper pocket for proper eye relief, so you're not introducing scope shadow into your sight picture, which I found to be problematic, especially for an optic that should work as well in close quarters as it does at intermediate distances. The now standardized testing procedure for optics is the drop test, shoulder height on a hard surface. Generally, I like to use concrete. The range I'm using currently doesn't have concrete, so I'm using this big flat rock. We're going to do a drop test from shoulder height. Why? Because things happen. Gravity exists. Life is random. Your optic can take a spill. Not necessarily falling over or being dropped from a shoulder height, but an impact, sudden impact with any kind of hard object when it's slung, or any number of situations where that could take place. I'm doing it so you don't have to, basically. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first drop test after the burn down and see if that causes any issues with the optic. First drop went great. Those shrouds that protect your adjustment knobs worked as advertised. Got a little bit of impact damage there, but it took the brunt of the fall. Went real quick, put it back on the rest, put it back into a prone position, and fired a 5-round shot group to confirm 0 was maintained. So then I moved on, another 500 rounds to the optic, and then I made it to the second drop test. Second drop test was pretty much a repeat of the first. The shrouds took the impact, put it back in a prone position, fired a 5-round group at the 0 distance. 0 was again maintained at that 0 distance. On my way to the third drop test, I started working the optic into some more close quarter shooting. I appreciate fixed magnification. It's not a preference of mine. If I had to choose an optic, I wouldn't choose as my go-to optic something that had a fixed magnification. There are some drawbacks to it. You have to use a lot of occluded eye shooting or bend-in shooting, or there's a bunch of different concepts behind it, reflexive fire. So what we're looking at is the fact that one eye has magnification occurring, the other eye doesn't. I want to combine those two images in my mind, in my brain, in order to shoot effectively. It's something I had to use when I had to use an ACOG. An ACOG is fixed magnification. I use the TA32. The CTS 1100's eye relief is so unforgiving that it made snapfire from a low ready or from a high port somewhat problematic. It was taking me noticeably more time to get target acquisition versus what I would be comfortable with or what I'm used to using even a traditional 1:8 or 1:6, or using a red dot. So that was something that I didn't necessarily care for, because that eye relief is so unforgiving compared to other types of optics that are out there. It wasn't necessarily a huge failing point, obviously, because eye relief is a thing that exists and it's going to be a problem. But I feel that at 3.5 magnification, the eye relief should not be that tight. There shouldn't be such a small margin of error there. Didn't really care for that. On the third drop test, I broke the battery compartment. Dented the cap in pretty good. It actually broke it, or I should say snapped it off of the threadings, and it bent the lid up pretty good. Well, though I was able to put the battery back in it, put the cap back on it, and it did power up the optic and the reticle. So that was something that in a worst case scenario, you could throw it back on there, wrap some tape around it or something like that until you're able to actually send it off to get it fixed, if that's something that happened. Probably should have put a shroud around that, at least some kind of protective situation, or had the battery compartment somewhere else on the optic. Again, is an optic going to fall like this every single time? Probably not. However, there's nothing there to protect it, and mounted on the side, you've got a lot of other rifle surface area that can help take a little bit of the blow out of a drop, a fall, or impact with another object. Now, did it hold 0? Again, 5-round group at the 0 distance, it held 0. So even though I now have a reticle that won't illuminate because I've destroyed the battery compartment, the optic is still holding 0 after those 3 shoulder height drops. Next 500 rounds. Another 500 rounds to the optic. I mixed in a lot more select fire, just because it was something I was working on. I do occasionally teach select fire type stuff, so I like to maintain my proficiency. And it's been a while since I've had to brush off the skills of select fire management under fixed magnification optics. So it was some good refresher, some good practice for me. I was definitely rusty when it came to that. Still having problems with the eye relief. You know, at this point I'm 2,000 rounds into the optic, and the eye relief is probably my biggest complaint. Again, I'd like to see the reticle be brighter. Now, the reticle itself is awesome. I do like the reticle a lot. I had no problem making transitions. It's clean, it collects a lot of light in the lens. I think that's partially due to the fact that you're looking at a 30mm objective lens. Making the transitions using the BDC, if you're used to a BDC, I was shooting 55 and 77 grain. I didn't see a significant difference. Again, it was on steel. I didn't shoot it on paper beyond 100 meters, so I can't, or I should say 100 yards. So I can't really say, is the BDC accurate or not. It was on man size, thoracic size, critical region steel out to 250 meters. So I was very pleased with the reticle, and that's probably my favorite part of the optic altogether. I do like that type of BDC reticle. I do like the murder bonnet or the war bonnet or the inverted horseshoe, or however you want to refer to that particular style of reticle. But the eye relief is definitely a big drawback. Now, how about that 4th drop test? After 4 drops, our optic is functional. Didn't break the glass, didn't create any more damage beyond that battery cap failure that we had on the 3rd drop, but did it maintain 0? So that was the last 5-round group fired at 100 yards, and you already saw the first 5-round group confirmation is 0 earlier in the video. It did maintain 0, so even after those 4 shoulder height drops, 2,000 rounds, the optic is good to go. I can't really say anything about it that I haven't already said as far as pros and cons. Pro is it's a very durable optic, battery compartment aside. Cons, the reticle needs to be brighter, even though I do like the reticle, the BDC reticle itself. And the eye relief, I would expect a little bit more forgiving eye relief for an optic that's only 3.5 magnification. Recommendations for this optic, I mean, it's reasonably priced, but you can get into a pretty decent variable magnification optic for around the same price. So would I recommend the CTS 1100? Yeah, if it's something that, if you like a fixed style magnification, illuminated reticle, you want something in that category, it's not a bad optic. It would not be my primary pick for a fixed magnification optic, but as far as their first offerings out of the gate, it's a good optic, but it does take a little bit higher degree of discipline to get behind it. And for me, it's not something I would personally use because the eye relief is unforgiving, the reticle doesn't get bright enough. As far as durability goes, like I said, battery cap aside, it is a durable optic. They do offer a 3-year warranty and free batteries for life. So there's some background features there. So if you're looking for a fixed magnification optic, something with a BDC, something illuminated reticle, I would take a look at the CTS 1100. But there are other optics out there that might give you a little bit more performance, a little bit more forgiving eye relief, and a little bit brighter reticle for the money. I'm Aaron Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.